What if Hitler didn't die in that Berlin bunker? What if he escaped to Argentina, to the seas, into history's darkest myths? Tonight, we uncover the strange facts that fueled the rumor and the truth that buries it. Crack open Latin America's boldest secrets. Fact checked, footnoted, and irresistible. I'm Arturo, and this is Latin Laura. From Latin America's history to mysteries and true crime to local legend, every tale is triple verified in archives before it reaches your headphones. Hit subscribe. Fresh revelations drop every week, ready for your next campfire debate. If the post-war world needed a stage for its most operatic rumor, it chose us, Latin America. Apparently only here, between the Andes and the Amazon, between empanadas and the eternal tango, could a secret that massive survive for nearly 80 years with nothing but a wink and a little mania. The implication is almost flattering. Not even the Swiss with their vaults, not even the outback with its empty vastness could keep the truth hidden. Only Patagonia's mist and a thermos of mate, according to this fantasy, had the power to cloak the world's most infamous fugitive. So the legend says Hitler never died in Berlin, that he slipped away from the bunker and lived out his days in the southern cone, maybe strolling by Nahuel Huapi Lake, maybe grilling steaks under the Patagonian sun. The story insists he escaped, vanished, and laughed at history, while the rest of the world convinced itself he was gone. Tonight, let's pull this myth apart, because as much as we might like to flatter ourselves with the idea that Latin America could hide such a colossal secret, the truth is less glamorous. Hitler died in Berlin on April 30th, 1945, and the evidence is louder than any rumor. The myth is born. The conspiracy did not start here. Its roots are in the rubble of Europe. In May 1945, barely weeks after Berlin's fall, a young British intelligence officer named Hugh Trevor Roper was given a task: find out what happened to Hitler. He interviewed surviving Nazis, gathered testimony, and after 7 rushed weeks concluded that Hitler shot himself while Eva Braun swallowed cyanide. His findings, later expanded into the last days of Hitler, became the cornerstone of the official story. Swift, perhaps too swift, but solid enough to stand the test of time. Yet from the moment the ink dried, doubts swirled. Stalin himself fanned them. At press conferences and meetings with Allied leaders, he slyly suggested Hitler might still be alive, maybe in Spain, maybe in Argentina. It was not truth, but politics. Casting uncertainty weakened the West and gave the Soviets leverage. In the chaos of 1945, even a whisper from Stalin was enough to plant a seed. Then there was the strangeness of the telegrams. Karl Dönitz, Hitler's chosen successor, was informed of his new position before he was informed that Hitler was dead. And when news of the death finally came, it spoke vaguely of a hero's death, not suicide. Confusion, delays, contradictory testimonies, these were the fertilizers of rumor. And when German submarines began surfacing far from home, the legend wrote itself. On July 10, 1945, U-530 emerged off Mar del Plata in Argentina. Its logbooks were missing, its crew silent. A month later, U-977 followed, after a bizarrely long voyage. To a rumor-hungry world, the explanation was obvious. They had carried a very important passenger. The reality, of course, was less cinematic. Tired submariners surrendering late, light on fuel, and with nothing to show. But once the possibility had been imagined, it never let go. Why Latin America was the perfect canvas? Why did this story settle on us, of all continents? Because Latin America was already haunted by real Nazi shadows. Here, unlike in most places, the unbelievable could not be dismissed outright. Adolf Eichmann, the mastermind of deportations, was discovered living quietly in Buenos Aires in 1960 and abducted by Israeli agents. Josef Mengele, the doctor of Auschwitz, flitted between Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil, where he drowned on a beach in 1979. Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, built a new life in Bolivia until extradited in the 1980s. Erich Priebke lived openly in Bariloche until journalists put him on camera and forced his trial in Italy. These men were not ghosts. They had addresses, jobs, neighbors. They left paper trails, bank accounts, and graves. Their presence in our region gave credibility to the wildest suspicions. If Mengele could sip wine in Sao Paulo and Eichmann could mow his lawn in Buenos Aires, then why not Hitler? The reality is that Latin America was not a single giant cloak of secrecy. It was a patchwork of governments, sympathizers, and chaotic escape networks. Rat lines pieced together by priests, diplomats, and opportunists shuffled fugitives from Europe to new lives abroad. Juan Perón's Argentina became a magnet, offering papers and protection. Journalists like Uki Gonyi later unearthed the archives, showing in cold ink how the system worked. The continent did not hide Hitler, but it did hide plenty of others, and that proximity to truth made the myth feel possible. Our famous mania. Now comes the sarcastic part, because if there is one stereotype Latin America can't escape, it's our supposed talent for secrets, our mania, that ingenious ability to bend the rules, to survive with improvisation, gets recast here as supernatural stealth. According to the myth, only we could have fed, housed, medicated, and hidden Hitler for decades without ever letting a single photo slip, without a single opportunist selling the story to the highest bidder. Let's be serious, our real secrets barely last a week. Eichmann's kidnapping became global news. Priebke couldn't resist talking. Whole regimes collapsed under the weight of whispered scandals. If Hitler had truly been strolling around Bariloche, playing chess in German clubs, someone would have spilled the mate long before Netflix. We are clever, yes. We know how to survive the impossible, to dance around bureaucracy. But we are not a black hole that swallows evidence forever. To think otherwise is to mistake our Baroque reality for magical power. What kills the rumor is not rhetoric, but science. In 1945, Soviet forces recovered fragments of Hitler's jaw and dental bridge from the Chancellery Garden. His dentist's assistants identified them immediately, and decades later, forensic experts confirmed the match down to the last bridgework detail. In 2018, modern biomedical analysis closed the case definitively. The remains are his. Witnesses, too, converge where it matters. Otto Günsche, his adjutant, and Heinz Linge, his valet, both describe the suicide and the cremation. Their details differ in places, but not on the essential point. And in 1956, after years of testimony and evidence, a Bavarian court issued an official death certificate. Bureaucratic, perhaps dull, but final. Put the teeth, the witnesses, and the legal closure together, and the idea of Hitler sipping wine in Patagonia collapses like a sandcastle at high tide. If the evidence is so solid, why did the myth survive? Because the Cold War thrived on smoke and mirrors. Both East and West courted former Nazis for their science and skills. Operation Paperclip brought engineers like Werner von Braun into NASA. A German submarine, U-234, carried uranium and scientists destined for Japan, but intercepted and rerouted to Los Alamos. To Soviet eyes, this looked like Western collusion. To conspiracy theorists, it looked like proof of secret bargains. But this context doesn't prove Hitler escaped. It proves that the world after 1945 was gray, not black and white. Pragmatism overrode morality. Men who should have faced trial instead built rockets and advised dictatorships. Into that fog, the myth of Hitler in Argentina found fertile soil. In the 21st century, the legend even found its way into glossy television. Between 2015 and 2018, the History Channel aired Hunting Hitler, a series that sent teams stomping across South America in search of bunkers and compounds. They filmed tunnels in jungles, chalets in the Andes, and walls that looked suspiciously Nazi. What they did not find, unsurprisingly, was Hitler, entertainment, not evidence. Still, the show revived the rumor for a new generation. A blurry photo from Colombia, a hotel guestbook in Cordoba, a declassified CIA memo. Every few years, the story resurfaces. Bureaucracies investigate leads because that's what they do, but paperwork is not proof. A report stamped unconfirmed does not equal survival. Yet in the public imagination, each scrap becomes another chapter in a thriller that refuses to end. The persistence of this story says less about Hitler and more about us. Conspiracies offer clarity where history feels messy. They turn bureaucratic confusion into morality plays. Lone truth seekers against powerful liars. They make history feel like cinema, with exotic landscapes and secret hideouts. A burned jawbone in Moscow is too mundane. A villa in Bariloche sells more books. For neo-Nazis, the myth comforts. Their leader did not die like a rat in a hole. He lived on, untouchable. For Cold War nostalgics, it adds another layer of intrigue. For television, it provides a ready-made mystery. For believers in hidden truths, it flatters their sense that reality is always what they don't want you to know. Meanwhile, Latin American reporters and historians have done the real work of uncovering what actually happened in our lands. They traced the rat lines, opened archives, named the accomplices, and documented the fugitives who did arrive. They showed that Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil and Bolivia became havens for men whose crimes had names and faces. They revealed complicity, yes, but also eventual exposure. Our continent is not a magical forest of secrets. It is a place where, slowly and unevenly, truths emerge. Imagine a courtroom, Latin American style, with a touch of sarcasm. The prosecution insists Hitler escaped to Argentina. The defense says two submarines did land here, U-530 and U-977, but none had Hitler aboard. The prosecution points out that Nazis really did live here. The defense replies, exactly, and we can trace them. Eichmann with his suburban home, Mengele with his false identities, Barbie with his Bolivian desk. Every one of those cases left trails. Hitler's case, by contrast, ends in Berlin with dental fragments, sworn testimony, and a death certificate. The prosecution flatters. If anyone could keep a secret that big, it's you Latin Americans with your legendary mania. The defense smiles, gracias, but our secrets leak faster than tereré through a cracked guampa. Dictators fell, bankers confessed, priests talked, and sooner or later, everything spilled out. If Hitler had been here, someone would have cashed in on his morning stroll decades ago. The reason the myth flourished here is because there was a grain of truth. Perón's Argentina did open its doors. Stroessner's Paraguay did shelter fugitives. Brazil and Bolivia had their complicities too. Rat lines existed, and they were fueled by Cold War priorities, church networks, and bureaucratic blind spots. Latin America did receive Nazis, but Hitler was not among them. And crucially, our region also produced the counter-narrative. Judges, activists, and journalists slowly pulled the veil back. Eichmann was exposed. Barbie was tried. Priebke was extradited. Bit by bit, our supposed land of secrets became the land of revelations. Not perfect, not immediate, but real. By now, the evidence is unshakable. In Berlin, on April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler killed himself. His remains were identified through dental evidence, confirmed by forensic science decades later. Witnesses described the act. A Bavarian court formalized his death. The Nazis who did come to Latin America left trails that we eventually followed. Hitler left none because his story ended in Berlin. And yet, the myth sails on. It tells people that truth is always elsewhere, hidden in jungles or chalets. That reality is always a trick played by the powerful. It reduces our continent, with all its struggles for memory and justice, into someone else's exotic backdrop. And it risks turning real history, our history of trials, testimonies, and reckonings, into a cartoon. But there is a lesson here too. We Latin Americans know how to live with contradiction. We know how to improvise toward truth. We know that history is messy, but not undecipherable. Discovering what really happened takes patience, evidence, and the humility to change your mind. On Hitler, that work has been done, and it points to one place, one day, one end. So let's close the thriller novel and open the archive. Hitler died in Berlin. Our continent is many things: chaotic, contradictory, resilient, full of mania. But his retirement home is not one of them. Next time someone swears they saw Hitler in Bariloche, offer them a mate tea and a bibliography. Then ask them if they've ever tried to keep a family secret through one asado. Gracias. Thanks for trekking the hidden trails of Latin America with me. I am Arturo, and this is Latin Laura. If tonight's story unsettled you, subscribe and ring the bell, because Latin America's darkest stories are far from over.